Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room, your home for Detroit sports news and information. Now, here's Jim.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Detroit Sports Room. And who's in the room today but Jeremy Reisman? He's the head editor of Pride of Detroit website and also has a podcast of his own and Twitch, and he does way too much. And
You telling me.
How are you doing? How's it going,
well.
Jeremy?
Thanks for the intro, Jim. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm here. No, I'm doing good. I'm fine. Yeah, I mean, number one, the first thing I ask people that are Lions fans are, how the heck did you get into this?
That's a great question. I did grow up in the Metro Detroit area. My dad was a big Lions fan. We actually had season tickets from when I was a kid on, and for whatever reason, the game of football stuck with me more than any other sports. Maybe it was just the proximity and being able to go to those games every year, every week. Maybe it was a guy like Barry Sanders, who's someone obviously I grew up idolizing. As kind of a short person myself, I think there was an additional thing that attached me to Barry Sanders. Just like, wow, a small guy could play this game. Of course, I couldn't. I had nowhere near the talent that he did, but it gave me hope. It gave me, just like playing on the playground. I just wanted to be Barry Sanders, and so I think he played a huge part in me becoming a Lions fan, and so did my dad. Having it be a passion.
The pain
of his.
is handed down.
Absolutely, yes.
He's like, I've been in misery for years. Here you go, son.
Exactly.
No, on a serious note, though, I just interviewed this guy called the Football History Dude. Really cool guy. If you ever get a chance to check his stuff out, he kind of like goes back into the past. I mean, way past, like when it first started. And he was telling me that Detroit, I think it's even before they became the Lions, got screwed out of a playoff game way back when. So maybe there's just something to, they just hate the area or something. I don't know. But he said the same thing you did, Barry Sanders. Yeah. And how many fans I've talked to that Barry Sanders has had a huge influence on their life and impact on their fandom. It's amazing. It really is. It's like almost everybody was touched by Barry Sanders. It's a Detroit Lions fan.
He was the quintessential player. Like, he was humble. He wasn't flashy in terms of his personality, which, I mean, some people enjoy, and at times I enjoy that too. But someone who knows he has the skill and doesn't even need to flaunt it, to me, that's a truly special kind of person. And he's a guy that never created any sort of off-season drama, outside of the one big one at the end. But in general, like, he was just like such a likable guy, such a quiet guy, and undeniably one of the greatest talents that the NFL has ever seen. And Lions fans like myself complain about our history all the time, and rightfully so. There's no championships, but we also have to feel pretty blessed that we had a guy like Barry Sanders for as long as we did.
Well, the football guy would tell us that we do have championships. We just have no Super Bowl.
Right.
But,
true.
But we weren't alive back then to see it, so I don't know how important it is to each of us.
Right.
So you are the head editor of the Pride of Detroit website, which I go to frequently. In fact, you had an article with Jamie Collins today.
That's right.
I was like, wow, that's good.
Yeah. Surprisingly, there's an NFL coordinator out there that thinks he's the second best off-ball linebacker in the league, and that was pretty surprising to me. He still landed 8th as a consensus vote, so there's a lot of respect for that guy around the league.
It raises my spirits. I think he's going to play more of an inside role than an outside role. Everybody had him kind of, getting sacks and all this stuff, playing the jack role, and I don't think that's going to be the case. He's more of a interior lineman to me, but still gets pressure and stuff.
I agree.
But I think the big thing about him is he can cover.
Yeah.
Very underrated. People don't really know how effective he is in covering tight ends and running backs even out of the backfield. So I think that's going to really improve our defense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most underrated talents you can have on your defense, because you talk to some coaches and they say one of the biggest mismatches you can have on offense is a really talented tight end, because they're too big for corners and safeties to cover, and they're too fast for linebackers to cover. So if you have a guy that transcends that on your defense, that is big enough to play physical with the tight end, but also quick enough to chase him downfield, that's a huge piece. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. And you're right. I think that's his best. He comes in and he's immediately the best coverage linebacker the Lions have had. I don't know, maybe since DeAndre Levy. Yeah, very long time.
I remember that one year, man. It was just over the middle of the tight end, the middle of the tight end. I'm like,
Yep. And it feels like it's still been that way. Maybe not to as much of a degree, but like, yeah, it's when that happens, it's just like death by a thousand needles. It's just, it's frustrating as a football fan, but there's not a lot you can do sometimes as a coach with that, because they are just it's just like such a big mismatch that really only talent can supersede. And Jamie Collins gives the Lions a shot now.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Let's go back to you a little bit. Head editor of Pride of Detroit. How was that journey? I mean, how did you go step by step maybe into that role that you're in now, and what do you see happening for your future?
I kind of have an off the beaten path route to where I am today. I graduated from University of Michigan with a psychology degree.
Yes, so you can figure us Lions fans out. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe that I was probably trying to self-diagnose why I had done this to myself. But yeah, after I was in that field for 3 or 4 years after graduating, and what I was actually doing, Pride of Detroit has a section on its website called fan posts. And so I started writing some fan posts there and just kind of throwing down my thoughts, nothing in particular. Eventually I developed this thing called On Paper, which is my preview that I still write today, which just kind of, it takes a little bit of more unique look at each matchup. It looks at the offense versus the defense. Sometimes you see a lot of previews saying like, all right, which team has the best passing offense? They get that matchup. And I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. The passing offenses aren't going against each other. Who cares who has the best passing offense? It's who has the best passing offense relative to the other team's pass defense that's important. And so I developed this. I actually got picked up by a very short-lived website called studyofsports.com. I don't believe it still exists in any form. So I started – that's where I kind of like started to like really develop my form and things like that. And eventually the guy who ran Pride of Detroit at the time, Sean Ewell was his name, he said
I remember him.
Yeah, he was he started the website. He built the foundation of Pride of Detroit. Basically everything that Pride of Detroit is today I owe to Sean. He worked his tail off to get that website to where it was when I took over about 4 or 5 years ago. But anyways, he approached me, said, listen, I saw what you've been doing in the fan posts. I like what you've been doing. Do you mind if you write maybe once a week, we throw something on the front page, no pay or anything. It's just like you get more eyeballs on it. I'm like, heck yeah. More people seeing my stuff, more comments, more feedback. That's what I want. And so I took that as an opportunity. At first it was just those previews, but I'm like, I want to do more. I want to break down film. I want to do statistical analysis. I want to do news if need be. So basically, I just kept writing more and throwing more Sean's way, and he kept giving me the green light on things. Eventually, he's like, you know what? I think I approached him and said, like, hey, is there any chance there's anything in the budget for me? And he's like, yeah, we can work out something. And it was basically a beer money a month. So I'm still working a full-time job outside of this with kids for a while. Then I became the manager of a dog daycare center somehow.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wait, go back.
Yeah. So the thing is, after I graduated college, I spent a year in Michigan doing an internship around the psychology field. I was basically a one-on-one mentor or tutor for children with autism. And then I moved out to Los Angeles for 9 years. For the first 3 years, I was doing the same kind of work there. Got a little burnt out on it, and so I was just like, "Listen, I need to find something that's low stress, will allow me to have some free time to kind of do this writing thing as a hobby." I mean, to me, it was always a hobby, the sports writing thing.
Right, but you're calling Lions fandom low stress.
Well, no.
See, I don't know, man.
I was looking for a job that would offset that.
I see.
And working with dogs was like, hey,
okay,
who can stress out working around dogs all day? So
I misunderstood, man.
Yeah,
I was like, wait.
Right. So yeah.
Have you watched games in the fourth quarter? No, I'm kidding.
Exactly. But for 3 or 4 years, I was managing a dog daycare center in Los Angeles while just kind of, every now and then writing 2-3 articles a week for Pride of Detroit. I just started to get the writing bug around then. So like I created my own website for a little bit just to write down stuff that wasn't even about Lions. Like I remember it was when Breaking Bad was going on. So I started writing what I called like death power rankings, like the likelihood that each of these characters were going to die at the end of the episode. And it was just something fun for like a creative outlet to kind of continue to work on my writing craft. I reached out to some people who I really enjoyed their writings, and the most common feedback I got from them was just write. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be necessarily particularly insightful, but just continue to write, continue to put things out there. Eventually someone's going to notice if it's good. And if they don't right away, at least you're improving. At least you're honing your own craft. You're finding your own voice. And so I would say for about 6 years, I really started right around the 2008 season, ironically enough, the 0-16 season.
That's a perfect start.
Yeah, exactly. Start from darkness. Start from the
only way
the
is up
floor.
After that, man.
Exactly. And so I wrote for about 6-7 years, getting either paid nothing or very little, just finding my voice. And unfortunately, not everyone has the free time to do that. I was fortunate enough to be able to carve out some time to do that. But if you are interested in writing, that to me, that was the best advice I ever got. Write a bunch and also read a bunch. Since I don't have a classically trained, journalistic background, I kind of had to learn it from reading and hanging around other people and asking other people questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that are in this business, because unless I've only reached out to the super nice ones, basically everyone is willing to lend a helping hand, because it's not an easy field. It's not a high profile field. It's not a high paying job field. So we try to help each other out there. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, Sean Ewell essentially decided he was going to step down from the website, and I was the first name that he had in mind. And so I went through a couple, interviews with the people at SB Nation. They liked what I did, and from there, the rest is history. I essentially took over as managing editor, which means I'm responsible for probably about 60 to 70% of the written content there, and basically everything that's posted on the site I at least have eyes on before they go on the site. We now have a podcast, which we started about 3-4 years ago. We have a
which is nice.
Twitch.
It's very enjoyable.
Yes, I love doing it. It's one of my favorite things we do. We do it live on Twitch, which is a new venture for us, which is video streaming. It's a nice interactive thing, and the biggest change that we've had as the website is 3 years ago we became credentialed media, which was a huge step for us, because for the longest time the Detroit Lions had viewed us as non-traditional media, which means basically blog, website, and they didn't really give full access to sites like that. And so when that door opened, I immediately flew back to Detroit. I immediately flew back to the Michigan area. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be the person in the locker room. I wanted to be the guy in the press box at games. And so that's kind of my journey. And I think the biggest lesson I learned is just like, if someone opens a door just a little bit, you have to kick that door in and take every opportunity. So if you get an opportunity to write for a website, act like you're the managing editor. Write as much as you can. And if some things get turned down, that's fine. But at least you're showing the initiative to your bosses. You're developing your own voice, and you're putting the work out there, which people are eventually going to notice.
And one thing I got to say also is he had said that a lot of people in the industry are very open to helping, and he is one of them. Jeremy has helped me out quite a bit, and I've asked him some questions and some things, and to come on and be on for hours and hours talking with me and stuff like that. And I appreciate all that, man. I really do.
Of course.
It's been a long time. Well, I've actually watched your site way back, Sean, and before. I mean, it's been a long time.
The site's I think 13 years old or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I've been a fan for a long time. I like what you're doing now, putting that stuff on YouTube, or you're going to be doing that. That's going to be really, really neat, because a lot of us are YouTubers as well. Yeah. And so, we watch everybody and support them and stuff as a group, so that you have more people that like your stuff and everything like that. And what channel are you on? Do you have the?
I don't know the URL. Channel? If you search Pride of Detroit on YouTube,
we'll put it in the show notes and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're still very new to YouTube. It's the video kind of evolution of our website is interesting, because we started on Facebook Live because that was like the big hot thing a couple of years ago. Yeah, and then we just found out the environment was a little toxic. We couldn't really mess around with the visual too much, and there wasn't really a way to monetize it either. So moving to Twitch was much more community based. We don't necessarily have the reach that necessarily we did on Facebook, at least not to start. but it's much more community based. It's much more interactive. We can mess around with visuals. Sometimes we even play video games on the platform. We played
Fun.
video games with Graham Glasgow a couple times, which was really
that's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, and now we're pretty good friends there, and so I'm hoping to reach out and do more of that because, I mean, it's a unique way to reach your audience. It's a unique way to reach out to the players. So many players are video gamers. Almost.
Yep.
I wouldn't say all of them, but I would say at least like 60 to 70% of them are. And it's a way to build trust between our site and them. It's a way to get them to open up in a way they might not in a locker room setting. And so Twitch to me is really an untapped resource that I don't think a lot of websites are using and should be, but it's also great for things like this, for just like a video chat. And that's what we use for our podcast too. And we're hoping to reach out to YouTube too, so that we can bring in that bigger base, because while Twitch, I think, allows us to do more, YouTube is where the eyes actually are. So we have to kind of work our way in between both visual settings.
Yeah, I understand that, and it's a journey with any media that you go into to get a following, get support, and all that stuff. And you will. You just got to have the people that already follow the blog to, transition over to YouTube and maybe put those episodes in the blog and and that stuff to make sure the eyes are on it. That type of thing would work too.
Yeah.
There are so many different opinions about this team this year.
Yes, there are.
ESPN ranks them really low, and then other people are saying they're going to be decent. I have people in my group that are saying they're going to make the playoffs and win the division. I think they've had a little bit too much opium, but, you never know. What is your view on this team this year?
Well, it's interesting because I almost agree with everyone there. I feel like the range of this team is, I mean, they could be 10-6, they could maybe even be 11-5, but it wouldn't completely surprise me for them to be 5-11 either.
I know.
And a lot of I feel that way a lot of times, and I tend to kind of, in the off season, I try not to get too high or too low because there's just too many unknowns. But I think the real crux of the debate with everyone is with the defense, right? No one knows what the defense is going to look like because they overturned so much of the roster. They got rid of some big names, some big talented names like, Snacks and Darius Slay, which sounds bad, but those guys didn't play particularly well in 2019 either. And I'm not saying they aren't talented players. They didn't play that well. So when you replace them with guys like Desmond Trufant and everyone that they did on the defensive line, you think about it and you're like, well, those guys aren't as good as the ones that played before. They aren't as talented, but they could certainly play as well as those guys did last year.
If we have a pass rush.
Yeah, if you have, and that's
of any sort whatsoever.
Any sort. And so maybe Julian Okwara is the answer there. Maybe Austin Bryan is the answer there. Maybe a healthy Trey Flowers from week one. Last year he was dealing with the shoulder injury for the first month of the season. Maybe all that helps. Maybe Matt Patricia learns his lesson from the first 2 years and sends a little more heat. Not banking on that one, I'm going to be honest.
No, because it's not in his history.
It's not. But they also add two guys that really can allow, I think, everyone around him to be better. And Jamie Collins, the aforementioned Jamie Collins, one of the best linebackers in the league, if you listen to inside sources in the NFL. And Duron Harmon, who might allow.
I like Duron Harmon.
I like Duron Harmon a lot. I think he's one of the most underrated additions this offseason. And I really think he might make Tracy Walker, take that next step. Everyone's, I think, expecting it this year, and I think I can really see it too. I think I could see Tracy Walker come away with like 4 or 5 picks this year, and be
Tracy Walker's talented.
He's
he
super
really
talented,
It's
and
just the mental game yet. He's just he's still young.
He is still young, and the thing that maybe gives me the most hope about him taking that step mentally is that I saw him take a step mentally last year. In the first year in the locker room, he was kind of a shy guy. Understandable. It's his rookie year in the NFL. He's just, answers very softly, doesn't really have a lot to say, kind of toes company line. That second year, he's more vocal in the locker room. I can see him, talking with the buds, leading conversations. And then his relationship with the media was completely different. He was a guy that spoke with confidence. He was a guy that didn't mind, media scrums, didn't seem intimidated by media scrums. A guy that I think could very well be a team captain this year, just based on the maturity that I saw in one offseason.
God, I hope not every team captain gets traded. So. I'm just kidding.
That's incredibly true, though. I was looking at the team captains from last year. All 3 of them are gone. Devon Kennard,
It's like the Madden curse.
Yeah, it really is. It's crazy.
Don't be a team captain for the Lions. You're going to get traded. No, I'm kidding. I don't think Tracy Walker will get traded. I do think a couple of people are up on the block, though, this year. Do you see that? I see that. I'm going to name mine first. And
Sure.
I think that maybe Jared Davis at the trade deadline, if he's not showing more. And also, oh, come on. I got to think now. That's terrible. 33, Kerryon Johnson.
Kerryon, sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously it all depends on how the season goes. If they're doing well, they're probably not going to be sellers at the trade deadline. But the one name that I think should really people should really keep an eye on is Marvin Jones.
That was the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah, Marvin Jones was there were never any like substantial rumors, but there was always speculation that Marvin Jones was a guy that could have been traded this offseason. If the Lions were to, draft one of those talented wide receivers at the top of the draft in the first 2 rounds or so, Marvin Jones would have become very expendable.
Yeah, I'm sorry. He had a tragedy, though. And when they came out in support of him like that, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if things have changed or what, but it didn't seem like that was a guy they wanted to get rid of.
Yeah. And I don't know if they really have any. I haven't heard any sort of sources or people inside the Lions suggesting that they want to get rid of him. But if you look at things, it would be very much like the Golden Tate situation. Yep. They loved Golden Tate here in Detroit, but this is the last year of his contract, and if the season goes south and they're not they realize they're probably not going to contend for a division title or even a playoff spot. Marvin Jones is a guy who has a ton of talent. He's a guy. I mean, we've seen in the past wide receivers are kind of hot commodities at the trade deadline. So he's a guy that I think could certainly be on the block if things go sour this season. And the Lions would probably be right to move him, to be honest. I mean, get a 4th or 5th round pick out of him. It's not much, but it's probably more than you'd get from a guy like Jared Davis, maybe even Kerryon Johnson. I think right now the Lions are comfortable having 2 talented backs, so I don't necessarily see Kerryon Johnson being on the block because they like their depth. They saw last year, how frequently they have to shuffle between running backs because it is a position that frequently occurs, the injury frequently occurs with. So I think if anyone gets traded, it's Marvin Jones, but we're very far off from any of that because the season has to go sour before.
And if it goes sour, I mean, they could be fired anyway, so I don't know what kind of moves they're going to make.
Right. That's a good point.
They don't destroy the team and say, we're going out anyway.
Burn down the team on the way out.
Yeah, I know. Burn the building down on the way out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure of that. I don't know if those guys would do anything like that or not. It doesn't seem like it to me, but you never know. What is your take on Patricia? He's like this magnet for I either really don't like him or I do. I mean, it's kind of no in between for me.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, being in the same room with him, having him talk football, have him talk, candidly off the record and all that sort of stuff. You do get to like him. He's an interesting guy. He's incredibly smart when it comes to the game of football. And I know Lions fans might find that hard to believe given how poor the defense has been over the first 2 years. But he really is. And, sometimes we even talk a little bit of strategy when, the voice recorders are off, and I don't agree with him on everything, but I understand his point of view a little bit better. I think my main philosophical difference with him is the whole, run the ball first and stop the run first mentality. That's a tenet of him and why and what he believes in to build a good football team. And, I look around in today's NFL and that's not what I see. There are teams that do that. The Tennessee Titans are a team that got far in the playoffs doing something like that. And it's certainly a way you can build a successful team, but I think the way the league is going, the way football is going, is just spread offense, deep passes, explosion plays, all through the passing game, and that's something I'm not sure I'll ever really see eye to eye on, but it's something that talking to a guy like that, it gives me pause because he's a smart guy and he brings up analytics and he talks about certain strategies that maybe I hadn't thought of before, and clock management is another thing that I didn't think we really saw eye to eye on. But
me neither.
He gave me some things to think about too that I didn't change my mind completely, but again, kind of gave me more of an understanding.
Can you say any of those, or is that just a private conversation?
It was off the record, so I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
It in general, it's interesting. If you ever get a chance to talk to him off the record, I would recommend just talking football, because
I would love to.
Yeah, he's a really, really interesting guy to hear talk. And honestly, you can hear it when he does talk football in press. If he gets like a really good football question, which doesn't happen all the time in press conferences, because when the lines are bad, everyone just wants to ask, what do you got to say about the fans? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? But if you give him like a really good football question, he'll go for 5-10 minutes and talk a mile a minute about it, and it'll be really interesting. Now, the big issue and the big question I still have with him is his ability to lead a team. And that's a whole different thing. And it's something that he didn't have a ton of experience coming into Detroit. Being a defensive coordinator, certainly there is an amount of leadership you have to have there. But having command of an entire team is a different thing. And we've seen the first 2 years of that have been rocky. And his personality isn't for everyone. We know he's kind of, an authoritarian of sorts. And that's not going to work for everyone. My question is he able to adjust? Is he able to realize that not everyone is going to respond to that? I think a good leader, a good teacher of any type is someone that realizes everyone kind of has an individual way to learn, an individualized way to work. Some people, they respond to the stick. Some people respond to the carrot. Some people, you have to coddle a little bit. You have to give a bunch of compliments to. You have to word things to them very carefully so you don't hurt their feelings. Other people you can speak to extremely candidly. You can yell at them. You can talk to them like you're their father. And so far, we have seen a little bit of change. We have seen a significant change, I would even say, from year 1 to year 2 with Patricia. He came out very confrontational, both with the media and with players. We even that first year, I think I kind of shrugged them off at first, saying like, there were leaders on the Lions team saying, he's running us too much. He's taking away our cell phones in the locker room. They took away the ping pong table in the locker room. I'm just like, at first I was like, when you go from Caldwell to anyone else, it's going to seem like you're getting kind of a more authoritarian type. But then you hear some of the stories about that first year and you're like, oh, it actually was a problem. He was a problem, and there's no question about it. But when you come out and see in year 2, he's opened up about himself a little more. He's been more affable with the media, joking around a little bit more. And you even heard some of the players that were disgruntled with him say it, like things were smoothed over for the most part in year 2. So that sort of change to me gives me optimism that he's learned from his mistakes in year 1. He's potentially more of a player's coach, not to the Jim Caldwell end of the spectrum. I don't know if you can even get close to that end of the spectrum. No. But he's gotten to a point where, players like him, and that's not to say that nobody liked him before. I mean, we've heard from several players that said they came to play in Detroit specifically because of Patricia. But he's been a more likable guy to everybody, and whether that turns into more wins, I don't know. Like I said, there's still a lot of philosophical things I don't agree about him. But in general, he's a guy that I know is very smart, and he's a guy that has shown that he can change. And to me, that's worth a shot in year 3 and to see how everything works out. And so I'm willing to withhold my judgment. I know I'm not happy with the results. I know there are a lot of things I don't agree with him on. And I do think he deserves a lot of criticism for what happened in year 1 in terms of his relationship with the team. But I think everyone deserves a second chance. We got to remember this was the guy's first year as a head coach at any level of football. And so I'm willing to give him a second/third chance here to see what happens. And hopefully it turns out good for everybody.
Yeah, I hope so too. I do like the run first thing. So I got to disagree there a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's just my opinion. But I think because the Lions have had no running game, the defensive ends have just been able to peel their ears back and just go after the quarterback and not even worry about the run game.
Sure.
And so I think there's more pressure on Stafford because of that, and I think the play action works much better when you can actually run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense logically for sure. And yeah, I think there's no question that the Lions need to be more efficient running the ball. Like they're consistently averaging less than 4 yards a carry, and they need to be better. My question is just like, do they really need to focus on it more though? They just need to be better at it. I'm fine with running as much as they have in the past.
I think they need to focus on it more.
Okay.
I do, because it opens up Stafford. You know, people don't think that, but
Yeah.
you know, you run a couple of plays and you're running it down their throat, and then all of a sudden it's a play action and you go deep.
Yeah.
They got that safety coming up.
Sure. Yeah. And
So
I mean,
you got one-on-one coverage, you know, over the top.
and
I would bet on Marvin Jones or Kenny Galladay in those one-on-ones any day. And so I really believe that it does help. I think it does. And the fact that you could run the ball and keep the defense off the field keeps our defense fresh too.
Yeah, there are two things I want to say about the benefits of a running game. One is that play action that you mentioned, and that's what we saw last year. I think a lot of those big hits that the Lions had last year were because of the success of play action. And there's an analytical debate about whether having a good running game even matters for the efficiency of play action. Some people, some analytic heads say it doesn't even. If you have a bad running game, you're just as effective at play action as a good running team. That doesn't seem to make a lot of logical sense, but
sense to me.
But some numbers apparently show that's the case. But I think the other thing, and this also kind of harkens back to last year, the ability to run in the fourth quarter of a football game is very important, and it's something the Lions have lacked forever.
Yep.
That ability to run the clock, that ability to, you know, with 5 minutes left in the game and you've got a 2-point lead and you've got the ball, to just run out the rest of the clock. Would love to see that from a Lions team, but we haven't since the Barry days.
Even in the Barry days, when we did the run and shoot a couple of years, and it was very successful. But the one problem with it is we score too quick.
Right.
And then the defense would come right back on the field, and the defense would come back, and it ended up every game was kind of a shootout if we didn't just blow somebody out.
Right.
They could score too, then it was kind of, you know, you had to score every single time.
Yeah.
I think that's almost what Matthew Stafford feels like.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's almost like, you know, you got to air it out all the time. And it's like, okay, if we can't run the ball or score quickly, the other team gets the ball. Why do you think we're leading in a lot of these games and lost?
Yeah. That
Defense
was the story
gets
last
tired.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some pros to that. And stopping the run first, it does make a team one-dimensional, but the way his defense seems to be predicated on the secondary, I think that's not as big of an issue if he can get some pressure. The problem with his defense is he sends 3.
Yeah.
And then expects coverage. You know, you're never going to get the quarterback. I mean, maybe, but you're not going to get to the quarterback really easily with 3 rush and maybe another guy, whatever. But it doesn't work like that. Your guys can't cover for that long in this league with these receivers. No way.
And yeah, I think the question I have going into 2020 was, is that truly his philosophy, or is that his response to having the talent that they did on the team? Because who were they going to send out there as a fourth pass rusher that was effective?
Yeah, that's true. Well, with all the injuries. And that was something else I was going to bring up with you real quick, and I wanted to get your take on this. Because of the situation, COVID-19, all this other stuff that's going on, we're not having practices. They don't even want to play the preseason. I mean, we're having very limited stuff. And with the Lions, I've noticed Slay held out last year, he was injured last year. Snacks held out, he was injured, never was himself. Whether he wanted to leave or he was just injured, I don't know what the situation was.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it seems like the Lions have a lot of injured players anyway. How do you think this affects this team?
It could be big. I mean, one of the most interesting things I've heard from all of this is the NFLPA's medical director saying we recommend a 48-day training camp to ramp up so that we don't see an additional amount of injuries like they saw with the lockout. The lockout saw shortened off season that didn't have OTAs, didn't have mini camp, and they saw, I think they said, a 25% increase in injuries that year.
Yep.
And so
what would a 25% increase due to the Lions this year over last year?
Right. And
we
so,
had 14 healthy players for the year.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so you think about how last season ended, some of the players that ended the season on injured reserve, there was a bunch. I think probably most concerning of them in terms of whether they'll be ready this year is probably TJ Hawkinson with his ankle injury.
Good.
He did look good on that video of him cutting, but you never really know. Like, if that's his first running routes, like, he probably still has a long ways to go to get his lower body in shape because he was in a scooter for a long time. So he might not be ready. He might be on the PUP list to start training camp just so that he gets in shape. He's not quote unquote injured. He just needs to get up to football shape. And
that's one thing also. We always have that surprise every year.
Yeah. There's always one guy.
There's one guy like, what the heck?
And so, yeah, I mean, we could very well see that. I do think the NFL needs a long ramp up period. I don't know whether they're gonna get it. I mean, as we record this, training camp is 2 weeks away, and we still haven't heard anything about the fate of preseason. We haven't heard anything about the fate of when rookies are supposed to report to camp. There are two teams that have rookies that are supposed to report at the end of this week, and they're just kind of sitting with their hands in their pockets, going like, "What are we doing here?" And so, I mean, if this team, if the league was going to have that 48-day ramp up to training camp to the regular season, they'd have to start yesterday-ish.
Yeah.
So
they should have started already.
Yeah, exactly. And
but
so I don't
have a plan in place, and this is something I wanted to bring up too. They have a plan in place where they skip the first week, put it on week 17, and then the second week, every team that plays in the second week has the same bye week.
Right.
And so they just put it on their bye week and then give them another bye week or do something else.
Right.
But they gave that extra 2 weeks just in case something would happen or whatever. I wonder if that's what they're going to do and extend the time period that they're able to get in shape for this season.
Yeah, it would make perfect sense to me. I think it's something that they have to already be heavily considering, I imagine. And obviously they wouldn't put the schedule like that if they didn't consider it. But then you're facing 17 straight weeks of football, right? There's no or 16 straight weeks.
Work it. They might go ahead and put another bye week in for those teams, and then just extend the season an extra week.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. There's a lot to be figured out, and not a lot of time to figure it out, which is why I'm pretty pessimistic about the odds that the season starts on time. I'm even pessimistic about the season happening at all, but I don't see how it happens on time.
There's so many people that are saying yes, it's going to happen. Yes, it's going to happen. Yes, agents are saying yes, it's going to happen, and every time we get close to a date that they're actually supposed to do something, they cancel it.
Right.
So far,
the only things that I mean they were able to do on time was free agency and the draft, and that didn't really require a lot of
the Hall of Fame
movement or anything. The Hall of Fame game's done.
The
first
Hall
preseason
of Fame
games
ceremony is done.
Yep.
Not till next year. Now that one hit me. I'm like, holy cow!
Yeah.
You just didn't postpone it a few weeks. You just said nope. Not till next year.
Yeah.
So they're not anticipating anything changing anytime soon.
Doesn't seem like it.
So I don't know. I think we're left with empty stadiums. I do believe that for this year.
Yeah.
I think that they'll play. I do. I think they'll play. And I've been on the fence about this because, I mean, it's been back and forth for me. But if they set up a system where they test them all the time, you know, that's another thing. Michael Kopech, he's a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. One of their main pitchers opted out for the season. Do you think any of the Lions would opt out?
I think there's a chance. I think the majority of players won't. I think the majority of players are itching to be back right now. They're you see a bunch of players posting their workout videos and doing those workouts with players and practices with players, even though the NFLPA asked them not to. I think that tells you everything about the mentality of most NFL players, but there are certainly there are certainly people that feel differently, that are concerned about the health risks. There are going to be players that are higher risk than normal. You think of NFL athletes as these crazy athletic healthy guys, but that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes it's just something as simple as asthma. I believe it was, who was it? It was the Von Miller. Von Miller, who contracted it back in April, said he went through a lot, and it's because he has asthma. And you think of a guy like Von Miller, he's got to be one of the most athletic players in sports.
Yep.
But asthma is a thing, and it's something that athletic people have. And obviously offensive linemen too, maybe not the most athletic people in the world. I don't know necessarily how weight is affected by COVID, and if there's any comorbidity between the two, there might not be at all. But you just have to remember that there are underlying medical issues that have nothing to do with being in shape that could be affected by COVID, and these players know if they're at higher risk. Maybe it's a heart condition, maybe it's a lung condition, maybe it's diabetes. I don't know. There are just a lot of different things that beyond the muscles that are going on underneath all that and can be affected by COVID and their family members too, right? Because currently the plan isn't
older people.
Currently there's no plan necessarily to go in a bubble, which means these players are going home to their families at the end of the day every day, and so there's a risk there.
If the players are tested though, and those tests are accurate, I think it's going to be okay. I mean, we got baseball players right next to each other with no mask on or anything like that. I watched a 3-inning scrimmage game yesterday.
Yeah.
And so they're getting ready to play. Basketball's getting ready to play. You know, I think we're going to have sports of some sort soon. And I think football will go on.
Yeah,
and
I hope so.
I really do. I have a question, and then this is going to be strange because people like to ask this question. So it's kind of a two-part thing. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, and do you see yourself at a Super Bowl party for the Lions?
Oh, man. I have to answer the second one first and say I don't because I don't have a good enough imagination to even know what that looks like.
You don't play Madden? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. When it comes to predicting and things like that, I'm always of the ilk that, like, I'm not going to predict something crazy to happen until it happens with this franchise. So, like, for the longest time, I'm never going to predict this team to win 12 wins because they've never done it since I've been alive. Why would I do that?
Right.
And
it's
so,
just a fun thing, though.
Yeah,
it's
of
just
course. Of course. But as to where I see myself in 5 years, it's a really interesting question because I do think this is an ever-changing medium, and with newspapers sadly getting phased out a little bit, and sites like mine growing. I mean, we've seen big growth in the past couple of years, and more than I could even possibly imagine. But the trick is always like being ahead of the curve on these sort of things, whether it's with video, whether it's with podcasts, whether it's with long form articles instead of short form, or whether it's for listicles as they call them, top 5 guys, top 10 moments, all that sort of stuff. It's trying to stay ahead of the curve. It's trying to be on every social media that's breaking out, and so it's I'm a 34-year-old. It's hard for me. I don't have a TikTok. I don't like TikTok.
Really?
But
I'm 50. What's wrong with you, man? I'm just messing with you, by the way.
But I mean, it's hard for me to keep up with some of that stuff. But there are, like, to me, the most fun stuff I do is the interactive stuff with fans. So it's the video podcast. It's the video game stuff. It's interacting with players one-on-one in unique forms. So I think that's where I want to kind of focus more on than just like, I don't necessarily think the world needs another Lions website to report the news. There are plenty of things out there to report the news. Yep. So I want to, and I understand people want one-stop shops, and so Pride of Detroit is going to continue to do that, continue to provide news and do that. But I've never wanted to be like the Adam Schefter type that are breaking stories necessarily like that, because, like I said, like, they're always going to be people that provide that role, and it's, to be honest with me, it's kind of boring. Like, I know there's a little bit of thrill to be like the first one out there, and I've been the first one to report a story here and there, and yeah, that does feel kind of exciting. But to me, there's not a lot of creativeness to it. There's not a lot of interaction there, and so yeah, my focus, I think, not necessarily long term or short term or anything, just like, one of the things I want to pursue more is that interactivity with fans, is that kind of creative outlets, whether it's video, whether it's podcast, whatever. Just kind of something that's unique, something that isn't being done in a lot of places, and finding that so that Pride of Detroit continues to have kind of a unique voice in the Lions fan base.
Well, it's been a great voice for me. I really appreciate you being on with me. And, this has been a cool little series so far of having fun people on. And every time we talk football, we could talk forever, but I promised you 45 minutes, dude. So
we could definitely go on for sure.
And we're here at that place. I appreciate you, Jeremy. If you want to go over to a website with a bunch of Lions content, and I think the best one out there for that content is prideofdetroit.com, and you'll find Jeremy there, and a bunch of other people actually that write there over there. Yeah. And we really appreciate you being on, and thank you very much, man.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate all the kind words.
All right. Well, you have a good one now.
You too.